Get ready to board Nocturne Train 587, a train no one remembers seeing, but from which no one can escape. Are you ready for the ride? At a deserted station on the outskirts of the city, an echo is heard in the distance. The clock shows 2:57 a.m. as an old, rusty train, not listed on any schedule, slowly comes to a stop on the empty platform. No one disembarks from the train. The conductor is merely a blurred shadow in the cab. However, when the doors open, a strange melody begins to play from inside, inviting anyone who hears it to board. Young Daniel, who works at the station, feels an irresistible curiosity. Despite his instincts warning him, he decides to board the train, which seems to call him by name. Daniel shivers as he crosses the threshold. Inside the train, the atmosphere is even stranger. The carriages are decorated with luxurious antique furniture, but everything is covered in a layer of dust. At the back, a hooded figure sits alone, playing an old, out-of-tune piano. Daniel walks through the carriage, his steps stirring up the accumulated dust. The hooded figure ignores him completely, but the melody playing seems to resonate in his mind, as if it were meant only for him. Suddenly, the train shakes violently and the lights flicker. Daniel grabs a seat, trying to keep his balance. When the lights stabilize, he realizes that the hooded figure has disappeared, leaving only the echo of the melody. Confused, Daniel moves towards the next carriage. To his surprise, it is filled with passengers dressed in clothes from different eras, from the 1920s to the 1990s. But something is wrong. They are all motionless, like statues. Daniel walks past the motionless passengers, his breath quickening. Suddenly, one of them, a woman in a 1950s dress, slowly turns her head and whispers, "You shouldn't have boarded this train." The woman's voice echoes in Daniel's head as he continues walking, afraid to stop. Each carriage reveals a stranger scene than the last, until he reaches the end, an empty carriage with a single door at the end. With his heart racing, Daniel opens the door to the last carriage, hoping to escape. However, what he finds is something entirely unexpected. The door leads back to the same station he left, but now the clock reads 3:57 a.m. Confused, Daniel exits the train, but something is not right. The station looks identical, but he feels a profound emptiness. When he turns to look at the train, it has already vanished. Only the melody's echo remains in the air. The young man checks his phone, but there's no signal. He decides to walk towards the exit, but each step fills him with inexplicable fear. Did he really return to the same place? Something in the atmosphere tells him he hasn't. As Daniel exits the station, he finds a thick fog enveloping everything. The streetlights barely shine through the mist. As he moves forward, he realizes the station has disappeared behind him. Desperate, Daniel seeks shelter, but the fog seems endless. In the distance, a blurry figure appears. Although he can't make out details, he feels as if the figure is following him. The figure approaches slowly, its presence unsettling. Daniel realizes he can't escape the fog or the figure. The atmosphere becomes increasingly oppressive, and the melody returns. Suddenly, Daniel hears a creaking sound coming from the upper floor. Each step he takes toward the stairs feels like an eternity. He knows he must find out what awaits him upstairs, but something inside him tells him to run. Daniel climbs the stairs slowly, each step creaking under his weight. Upon reaching the hallway, he sees a flickering light coming from his old room. As he approaches, the flickering stops, and absolute silence envelops him. Daniel pushes the door open slowly. The room is intact, but a figure stands by the window, facing away. Before he can react, the figure turns around and faces him with a smile that doesn't belong to this world. Panic overwhelms him, but his legs won't move. The figure, now eerily resembling him, approaches slowly. Its eyes glow with an indescribable malice. In a desperate effort, Daniel manages to move and back away toward the door, but it slams shut. Now trapped in the room with his doppelganger, each step brings the figure closer. Desperate, Daniel tries to open the door, but it is blocked. He feels the figure's breath on his neck when suddenly, everything goes dark. A whisper fills the room. "You should never have returned." When Daniel opens his eyes again, He is back on the train, seated in the same carriage where it all began. The train stops at the same station, but this time, the melody has ceased and only silence remains. The train stops and Daniel quickly disembarks, not looking back. As he runs through the station, he notices that the clock now reads 4:57 a.m., and the fog around him is even denser. Finally, he reaches the station's exit. As he steps through the door, the fog suddenly disappears, and Daniel finds himself on an unfamiliar street. However, the clock continues to advance, and something in the air tells him the danger is not over. Daniel walks down the unfamiliar street, feeling that each step takes him further from reality. Suddenly, his phone rings. Looking at the screen, he sees a message from an unknown number. The train will return for you at 2:57 a.m. Daniel runs desperately back to the station, but upon arrival, everything has changed. The station is now a luxurious hotel with a grand clock in the lobby showing 2:57 a.m. and elegantly dressed guests everywhere. As Daniel searches for an exit, the clock in the lobby begins to chime. The hotel lights flicker and the crowd starts to fade, transforming into blurry, ghostly figures. The train returns to the station, now gleaming and new. The doors open, and the same melody invites Daniel to board. He knows his only option is to face the unknown once more. The train stops in front of Daniel, its doors opening with a creaking sound. He knows he can no longer resist. With one last look at the empty street, he boards the train, knowing this time there will be no return. Inside the train, everything is silent. The carriages are empty, with no sign of the motionless passengers. As Daniel moves forward, the train begins to move, plunging him into an endless darkness. Daniel sits in an empty carriage, closing his eyes as he lets the rhythm of the train take over. As he sinks into the darkness, a familiar voice whispers in his ear, "Welcome home, Daniel." The train disappears into the night, leaving only a distant echo in the deserted station. The clock shows 2:57 a.m., and the fog envelops everything again, as if nothing had happened. But train Nocturne 587 always returns for those who try to escape. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you want to share your story in the comments, subscribe. It helps me a lot to keep making content.